Well, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Brian with the Horror Experience. And as you know, the channel is really geared more towards horror movies and, well, movies in general, but horror is probably the most prominent. It's actually the most prominent genre of film that I have in my collection, anyway. So that's really what my interest is as far as movies are concerned. However, I do have a mixture, and I'll share that from time to time. Even though it's not horror, I'll still share that. I also share or talk about unusual things. We're talking about paranormal, UFO, cryptozoology, things like that, unexplained. And we explain those things. We try to explain away, or we try to look at all of the different possibilities that can make it either a hoax or something natural or what have you. Sadly, uh, you know, to a lot of people, everything's Bigfoot, everything's a ghost, everything's a UFO, but that's not always the case. In fact, 99.9% of the videos that you see on YouTube are fake. Um, the other 1% are explainable, natural things. And then there's this little teeny sliver in there somewhere that is completely unexplained. And that may consist of 2 or 3 videos on the entire platform. All right. I also talk about police stuff. And we talk about safety because I spent 32 years in law enforcement and law enforcement related professions. And so we talk about safety at home. We talk about, I've ran some shorts dealing with people knocking at the door, people using your doorbell ring, the ring doorbells, and when to answer, when not to answer, when to call the police. If somebody is causing trouble, then yeah, or if somebody refuses to leave, then just call the police. Yeah, for sure, or security, depending on who you have at your disposal. However, I'm going to talk about security today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about. This is going to be more geared towards people that are already in the profession. It's a profession that gets kind of a sad look for a lot of people, from a lot of people. A lot of security officers nowadays like to play cop, and it kind of leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, especially the police department. When I was a law enforcement, I had to deal with security officers all the time, and I ran into some wannabes that quite honestly pissed me off, and it really does, because they don't have anywhere near the training that police do. And even though here in California we have probably the most training than any other state. In fact, some states don't even require that you have a license, a security license. You just go to work with very little of anything. However, I think they kind of title it a little differently, and you're not expected to do anything except observe and report it, and that's it. You don't get no hands-on or any of that stuff. However, I don't know. I know Wyoming is one of those states, and who knows? They may be gunslingers over there. I don't know. But anyway, California, you're required to go through a 40-hour training course that's done by a bureau authorized or a bureau licensed training facility. And they train you in all the aspects of security. That was actually set up by Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was governor. And so he increased the training for security because he didn't think that training was enough. It used to be you just took the exam, with or without any study. And if you passed, you go to work. And if you wanted to carry any weapons like baton or asp or pepper spray or firearm, you had to go through separate courses for that, which is still true today. However, the training has increased now to become a security officer, so you have to go through a training course. And, I think it kind of helps a little. It kind of keeps some of the undesirables out of the profession, because you get a lot of people who really get into security because they think they're just going to get paid to just sit around and do nothing and sleep and engage in either illegal activities or undesirable activities, which, as a supervisor in security at one time, I ran into a lot of that. So illegal activities, people stealing, drunk on property. I had one guy that was so drunk that we had to, I had him arrested and taken to jail for drunk in public. He was so intoxicated he couldn't walk. He couldn't even put a key in a lock. I mean, it was just so bad. And but anyway, reckless driving, speeding. There's just all kinds of things, and you want to keep those people. You want people that are company oriented. You want people that care about what they're doing. They care about what themselves. Mostly, that's really the first thing. You want to care about yourself. You want to be confident with yourself and have a lot of good self-esteem. If you don't have self-esteem and you're not confident, you're not going to make it in security unless you're sitting in a, watching a pump or something, doing absolutely nothing. The chances, and you're out in the middle of nowhere or somewhere, the chances that you're going to run into something are probably pretty slim, but that's beside the point. I mean, you never know when you're going to get assigned to a place where you're going to have to deal with people on a constant or fairly constant basis. And if you don't have any confidence in yourself and you don't have any self-esteem and don't feel good about yourself, then it's going to be complicated for you. And it's not going to be good for the people that run into you either, because they're not going to. If you don't portray confidence, then and you don't feel good about yourself, people pick up on that. And when they pick up on that, they'll walk all over you. So, all right, the first thing that I wanted to touch on as a security officer, now this is after you're already working. The first thing is, if you work nights especially, days too, swings, it doesn't matter, make sure you're getting adequate rest. People that are working graveyard are going to suffer the most. You're going to have the most problems when you're working graveyard, because sleeping during the day for most people can be a real challenge. I struggled with it quite a bit during my years in law enforcement and security. It's very difficult. It can be. And it really depends on your situation, too, where you live. If you live in apartments, which most will, it's almost always going to be the case where your neighbor is going to be thumping their crap all day long and their rap music or something, and that's going to keep you awake. There's always going to be something. People knocking at the door, sales, that kind of thing. Phone ringing. So turn your ringer off. Make sure you're devoting yourself to at least 6 to 8 hours tops during the day shift. During your daytime sleeping. Make sure you try to minimize interruptions as much as possible. If you have kids and your wife or your girlfriend or whatever works when you're at home trying to sleep, and you have kids there, and they're going to be running around during the day, and they're not in school or whatever, and you have to take care of them, change careers. It does not work. I'm sorry, it does not work. I have worked with, I don't know how many people that have had a situation like that, and they always fall asleep. or they fall asleep behind the wheel. And I've had it happen with people, and I've had them crash and get hurt, and I've had people get killed because they fell asleep and somebody got a hold of their gun while they were asleep and shot them. You're just leaving yourself open for problems, and you have to be alert. You have to pretend like any moment something's going to happen, and you've got to be on your toes and ready for anything. So sleep is absolutely imperative. Make sure you guys are sleeping. And that is really the biggest problem that people that work nights have, is getting adequate sleep. And I'll tell you what, I struggled with it too. In fact, that was where, a lot of the drinking came from. A lot of people start drinking as a way to sleep. They just drink themselves into oblivion, and then they go to sleep. But that doesn't work either, because then you wake up hungover, you don't feel good, and then you're at work like that, dealing with situations, and it just doesn't make life very comfortable. It makes life miserable. And there's nothing worse than dealing with a shitty incident while you're hungover. It just doesn't work. We've all been there, I know, but to do that on a daily basis, and some people do. I know people that drink, they can drink all night and all day or whatever and get up and go to work. You know, um, I guess they're just so used to it, I suppose, but it's definitely not recommended. I did on occasion take a light sleeping aid, a sleeping pill. I wouldn't recommend using NyQuil. NyQuil is got medicine in it, and it's not good for the liver either. Plus, it's got alcohol in it. I think they actually took alcohol out of it, but it still has everything else in it. So you're really just taking a lot of unnecessary medicines. It'll just dry you up because it's an antihistamine, so it'll dry your ass up. But I did take a light sleep aid, just the Walmart brand. It just works. It works slowly. It's not something that just knocks you flat on your ass like Ambien does. My mom gave me an Ambien one time, and man, I was in sleep zone instantly. But I didn't feel well the next morning. I just felt groggy and uncomfortable. I just slept too much or too deeply. So you don't want that either. So this light sleep aid that I got worked fine, and plus I wake up refreshed. So sleep is imperative. So eliminate all of that. Eliminate all of any distractions, that kind of thing, to make sure to let people know, hey, I'm sleeping, don't call, unless it's an absolute emergency, obviously. But, if it's not an emergency, don't call me. The next thing is eating right. And this is another thing that's really hard for people that work graveyards, especially. It's real easy to just stop at the fast food restaurant and pick up a burger, and fries and a soft drink, and or a Monster or something, an energy drink or something like that, or coffee. Coffee's fine. I made my own coffee at home. I had a thermos, a big, huge thermos that carried plenty of coffee in it, so I could have coffee throughout. It would last 8 hours. And you can drink coffee all night, Yeah, it's going to make you piss, but you can stay awake that way too. It helps. It does help. It may not be the best thing, but it does help. But eating junk food is just going to weigh you down, and you're going to lose energy really fast. So eat right. Eat a good meal at home, even if it's just a sandwich or something. But eat something good, and then if you're going to make something for lunch, Everybody's on a different schedule. Swing shifts eat lunch at halfway through their shift. Graveyard will eat halfway through their shift or so. Um, I always broke it up and I would split it up. So I'm not. The last thing you want to do is you don't want to be predictable. You don't want, okay, well, what's his name's going to lunch now? He'll be gone for 30 minutes. You don't want to do that because then you're creating a pattern and people will watch you and they will attack your site when you're not looking. So if you're at lunch and they know what time you take lunch every night, you're going to get hit. So it's better to move it around. I know that's a hard thing to do, but that's one of the most important things about keeping something secure is being unpredictable and not setting up any patterns. And that includes the way you patrol. Everything's done randomly. You never want to do the same thing twice unless it's a planned thing like an unlock or an escort or something like that. If employees are getting out at a certain time, you have to do the escort. There's no way around it. If you have to unlock gates or doors or lock gates and doors at a certain time, there's no way around that. You have to do that. But everything else should be completely random. The way you patrol, where you patrol, what you hit first, your routes, everything. Mix it up. All right. So make sure you're eating right. Eat something healthy. You want to make sure it's hearty but healthy. I would eat a little bit before bed and then eat maybe something before you go to work, but don't eat anything too heavy. Because if you eat heavy stuff like a Big Mac or something, you're going to just weigh yourself down and you're going to be even more tired. So, and make sure that when you wake up, you take a nice shower. Always, one of the most important things about working any shift, I don't care if you're working a construction site or if the only thing that you're monitoring is a little 2-foot square and you just have to sit in a chair and look at a 2-foot square, you always want to look and feel professional, regardless. It doesn't matter if you're working an event or if you're working out in the middle of nowhere and there's nobody around or you're not expecting anybody around. That doesn't mean you show up in your, tennis shoes, jeans, and a t-shirt and walk around with your shirt unbuttoned and your hair uncombed with a full beard and all that. Now, the only reason why I have this now is because I'm not working now. So I'm retired or semi, and so I don't need to worry about it anymore. So I kind of let this stuff come out, kind of giving my face a rest from all those years and years of shaving. So make sure you guys are eating right. Uniform and equipment, and make sure you're ready. Make sure your uniform is pressed and clean. I know most companies only give you 2 sets. They give you two shirts and 2 pants, and that's it. They don't give you anything else. They don't give you belts or any of that. You have to provide your own belts and your own equipment in most cases, unless it's equipment that's for the site or that kind of thing. Some companies are more generous than others. Some will give you flashlights, some will give you other things, but in the most of the time, you need to supply your stuff. Make sure you get a good flashlight. It doesn't need to be this huge ass long, mag light. It can be something light, something easy to use, something bright, something that's, nowadays they've got these nice solid lights that last a long time, and they've got some serious candle power. And some people get the lights that have, stun guns on one end and all of that. You can do whatever you want on that as far as that goes, as long as you check it out with your company first. But safety is always first, but it doesn't have to be this big flashlight. Make it something that's easy to handle. It's not going to weigh you down. You don't need some big old thing flopping on your waist, Make sure your uniform and your equipment is ready to go. Make sure you keep your keys and your equipment and your belt and everything else all in one place. That's a mistake everybody makes. They have everything spread out. They just throw everything everywhere. And then you spend half an hour looking for all your shit. Going from one end of the house to the other, trying to figure out where you put something. Keep everything all in one place. Find one place to unload and one place to load before you go to work. Okay? So hygiene is important. Readiness, make sure everything's ready to go. Make sure your uniform is clean and neat. Nobody gives a shit about a security officer that looks like shit. If you look like a bum walking down the street with a wrinkled up uniform, and you don't look like you're taking anything very seriously, then people aren't going to give you any respect whatsoever. They're just going to walk on you and pick on you, and they're just going to think you're a joke. So the best thing to do that's the first thing, is first impression. First impression is always appearance. What do you look like? It's just like when you go to a job interview. You want to dress like you're going to a job interview, except you're in a uniform. Okay? And even if you're plainclothes, if you're working loss prevention or what have you, of course that depends on what you're doing. If you're undercover, then you might dress up like I am. If you're, you want to look the part. You want to look like you're just somebody shopping or something. You don't want to look like some FBI agent walking around. All right? So make sure you're clean. Make sure your equipment's ready. Make sure your uniform's ready. And make sure keep your shirt tucked in. Keep it solid. Everything tight and solid. So when you get to work, you feel like you're together, and it makes you feel confident. It gives you that extra boost knowing that you feel like you can handle anything. And people that approach you feel like this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. Okay? First impression is appearance. Not when you start talking, it's appearance. But the next thing is always be friendly but firm. Don't just start mouthing off to people or, acting like like you run the show. I see a lot of cops doing it too. Instead of being friendly and keeping the peace, people are going to respect you and do things that you request when you're friendly but firm. If you're just being an ass about it, they're just going to fight you. All you're doing is just throwing wood on the fire. You're just making it worse. You're just going to make it all that much more difficult to deal with that person and to get things done. You want to get things done being nice. People are going to do things for you when you're nice. It's just like with Patrick Swayze. Oddly enough, I actually worked on that movie. I did security in it for it. Like what Patrick Swayze says, you will be nice. You will be nice. Firm, but nice, And, another thing is, you're not expected to have something happen at your site all the time. And clients, keep this in mind too. Clients, this is for the people who hire security. If nothing's happening on your site, that means security's doing something. Okay? Especially if something was happening on your site before security came into play. Now, if you hire security and nothing's going on your property now, then that means they're doing their job. That doesn't mean get rid of it. That doesn't mean get rid of security. A lot of people think, oh, well, there's nothing going on my site, so I don't need security anymore. Fire them. The minute you get rid of it, problems are just going to come right back. So this is another thing I learned, and this came from Rambo, and it was something that Brian Dennehy said to Rambo, to Sylvester Stallone while they were in the car. And he said, this is a quiet little town. In fact, he might even say it's boring. And that's the way we like it. And I get paid to keep it that way. That's the whole purpose of security. You're paid to keep things boring. I know that sounds terrible. It's like, oh God, that's the last thing I want. I want to go on calls, man. I want to get into the shit. It's not always a good idea. Sometimes you're gonna end up getting hurt, or stirring up stuff. It's just not a good idea. And you want to keep those kind of people away from sites that do that. If you're a supervisor or an owner of a company, you don't want people that are looking for trouble at sites where you have trouble. Because if you got people that are looking for trouble at sites that have trouble, you're going to have 3 or 4 times the trouble you had before you sent them there. Okay? All right, the next thing I had for you. Well, we did personal hygiene. Make sure your teeth are brushed. Make sure you don't need this plaster cologne on. You don't need to do all that. You want to smell nice. You don't want to smell like shit. I knew a guy, and I hate to say this, but this was many, many years ago, but he didn't have a car or anything. But when we were hurting for bodies, man, we would call on this guy, and we wouldn't use him at any, like public places or anything like that. We would just use him at like construction sites or places that were, didn't really have much going on. And the reason being is, and I don't know, I didn't hire him, and I don't know who did, but the guy was very dependable, and he did what you told him. He never fell asleep. He always did his job. But he smelled like a corpse. I'm sorry, he smelled like a corpse. And he smelled like ripe shit. Every time we'd pick him up in a patrol vehicle, and we'd had to roll all the windows down. We always did it before he got in, before we even went to go get him, because we knew what we were in for. We never said anything, and we knew that something was just not right. What it was, I do not know, but you don't want to be something like that, guys, really. And, it's going to happen where, but the guy was dependable. Every time we called him, he was kind of a floater, but we floated him just at sites where we didn't have anybody, where we didn't have people. It wasn't like where you had to frisk people before going into a concert or something. We didn't want him there because the guy reeked, and it was just, and he was always wrinkled and never, it's just, he didn't take care of himself. And from what I heard, he was and this is so many years ago, I don't think it's going to matter, but I found out he was a hoarder too, so it was like he was living in trash, Probably didn't even have access to his bathroom. But anyway, I don't like to talk about people like that, but I'm just giving you an example. But when we called on him, he was willing to work. He went to work, and he did his job. He did his job. He was one of the best people we had out there. But every time I showed up, he was patrolling, and he was working, and he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. But man, I couldn't put him anywhere that had a lot of people, All right. Make sure that when you get to the site, make sure you've got your radio, because most of this stuff is stuff that you're going to pick up when you arrive. Make sure you get your pass down. Make sure that you have a book that has pass downs, and make sure that the previous officer is writing pass downs in the pass down form. You should have a form set up just for passing down information. Anything that happened on your shift, did you find a door unlocked? Did you find somebody on the property? Was there any new things that the client wants us to deal with, like turn off lights or lock something that we ordinarily didn't deal with? Or do we have a truck somebody that's supposed to arrive at a certain time? You want to know what's going on. Okay? And that way you don't want to get caught with your pants down if something happens or something shows up, or you didn't do something that you were supposed to do because somebody didn't pass it down. So make sure you're responsible. If you're working and you're getting relieved, make sure that you're passing down information, and make sure it's in the book so that all officers that come in all know what's going on. All right? Including the supervisor of the site. So you want to make sure you got your phone, if you have a company phone or your own phone, and don't spend all day on your phone. I know this, you know, that's one of the biggest problems nowadays is, everybody's on their phone now, Facebooking, texting, whatever. You need to shut it down, man. Now, on your lunchtime, if you want to, if you're on your break, do whatever you want. But don't, well, not do whatever you want, but if you want to look at your phone or talk to somebody or whatever, that's fine. But during work, while you're working, you don't want to be walking around looking like looking like some dunce walking down the street with their phone stuck in their face, okay? So that's what you don't want to look at. So you want your phone for emergencies. Should be used simply and only for contacting business using it for business related purposes, whether it's to call a supervisor, the office, whatever, a client. You're not calling your girlfriend, oh, hi, baby. That's not you can't do that stuff while you're at work. And you got to remember, this is security, people. You got to be on top of things, and you could be a target, So you need to be watching out. You need to watch your back. You need to watch your sides. You need to watch everything. If you're texting and playing around on your phone, somebody's going to notice that and take advantage of the fact that you're not paying attention. And whether that means hitting the property, stealing something, what have you. I mean, you're there to deter these problems, and if you don't look like a deterrent, you're going to get taken advantage of. So make sure you got your flashlight, phone, radio. Some sites don't have radios. Some do. Some companies have eliminated them entirely and have gone to this app where they do all their check-ins, their report writing, log in, log off. Everything's done on one app. It's convenient, but it's eliminated the radio. I guess they kind of look at it like this. If you need to call somebody, use your phone. I don't really like it because it doesn't look like you're busy. It looks like you're on your phone texting somebody. If you're writing down stuff about the site or you're writing your report or something, it looks like you're up, in there texting or something, and it looks unprofessional to me. And to be honest with you, it was one of the reasons why I kind of got out of security, is because all these companies are doing that now. They've eliminated the radio. Yeah, they're expensive. Yeah, you have to charge them. Yeah, they have to change the batteries. Yeah, But they're immediate help. If you need help, man, it's right now. It's not dialing or looking for something on a phone list or getting on an app. Okay, it's just, it's a little too much. And it's too much in one end and not enough in the other. So I really think radios should still come into play. Yeah, if you want to use the app for report writing, for your time clock or whatever, for logging in, logging off, that I think is good. But everything doesn't need to be done on your phone. I mean, it just, it just looks unprofessional because people still look at it as, oh, that guy's texting, sitting in his car, playing on his phone, So, all right, make sure you got your site tools. So some of them have these things, they used to call them Dura-Wands, or these little things you go around and hit buttons. It's kind of like a time clock that they used to use in the old days. Believe it or not, I have never used a time clock, but I did use the Dura-Wands, and I did use the button things that are computerized. And you just put them into a computer downloader, and it downloads the information. So it shows the officer's doing his job. However, the problem with those is, again, it creates a routine. And that's what you're trying to steer away from. You don't want to do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that's what these things do. Is, I'm just going to start and hit the first button, second button, third button. You're not mixing it around. And it's kind of hard to do that because you got all these buttons everywhere. And, sometimes you lose track of what you hit and what you didn't. The idea is maybe keep a track of it and make sure you write in your report, I'm hitting buttons in different orders to keep myself unpredictable. keep myself going in a random fashion. And it makes it more fun that way. It kind of makes a game out of it in a way, you know? All right. Post orders. We already talked about that. Pass ons. Talked about that. Um, for current events, you want to be positive and professional, and you want to have a strong personality that is strong in the confidence and self-esteem area where you feel comfortable talking to people. And it doesn't matter where you work. I think all security officers should have that gift. If you don't have that gift, then you should not be in security or police or sheriff or any law enforcement for that matter. You should not, because you have to learn how to deal with people. And some people can learn fast and other people can't. And I think that's important where training comes in. And I think there's a training seminar that I used to do because I used to train security also. In fact, I've thought about going back into that profession, but it's expensive. The licensing can be expensive, and to find a building to do it and all that can be expensive. And especially in California, everything's expensive right now until we get rid of numb nuts. But I had a seminar that dealt with learning how to be more outgoing and learn how to approach people and to learn how to be firm but friendly and to learn how to deal with people in a positive manner, even if it's dealing with a negative aspect. Now, if somebody's, running around beating people up or something, then yeah, you need to deal with that at a different angle. However, if you're just approaching somebody who's standing around and they're acting suspicious or something, you want to approach them in a friendly manner because you don't want to start shit with somebody that you don't need to start shit with. What's the point? You're just going to make a quick and easy thing into a difficult thing. So why take a little hole and dig it and make it a big ass hole that you're going to get yourself into? It's like maintenance, When you see a little problem, fix it before it becomes a big problem. Because if you leave a little problem for too long, then it becomes a big problem. Or if you handle the problem incorrectly, it can become a bigger problem. So you want to use the maintenance kind of analogy where I want to go in and I want to fix the problem. I don't want to stir it up and make it worse. And that's what a lot of guys are doing, including police. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Give me your name. Give me your ID. That's not the way you approach it. How you doing, sir? Can I help you? Yeah, is there somebody I can help you find? Or is there something I can help you with? I can help you. Are you staying here? Or do you live here? And then move up to the ID thing. Well, can I see your identification so that I can verify that, I have to do this because it's part of what we do. We have to verify everybody. That's part of why I'm here. You want to give yourself reasons. You want to give the person a reason why you're doing something. And you're not just doing it because you want to be an asshole. You're doing it because this is what we have to do. This is part of the routine. This is what we have to do. We have to go through this. And I'm sorry that we have to do this, but we have to check everybody out. And they'll be like, oh, sure, no problem. Instead of, well, fuck you, I don't want to, why are you giving me an attitude? How many videos do you watch on YouTube that have that happen? With police officers especially. All of them. The only ones you see on YouTube are the ones that have a lot of action and something horrible happens. And it's always because the officer approached the situation with an attitude. And it just stirred the problem up. Especially when you're approaching intoxicated people. And there is a way to deal with difficult people or people that are intoxicated. Now, if somebody's on a drug trip and they're just whapping out, call the police. Now, if you feel like you're getting in over your head, call the police. And make sure you call a supervisor. Okay? Police supervisor. depending on the urgency of it. Supervisor, police. Use your own discretion on that. But always contact somebody if you can't answer a question, if you don't know whether or not to make an arrest. Just call the police. Let them take the blame if they do something stupid, but don't put it on you, because man, you can land yourself in a world of hot water, lawsuits and all kinds of things, and it can go not only against you, but it can go against the company, whoever the client is. Everybody under the damn sun can get part of this lawsuit because you screwed up. So, all right, I'm going to end it there. But anyway, a little lesson on security. We will continue this and talk about some other things on the next one. I hope this is helpful for those of you that have been in security and or that are in security or thinking about getting back into it after you've been out of it for a while. Some people keep their security licenses going or whatever, and then they get out of it for a while, but then they keep it going and then they get back into it after a few years away from it. And, sometimes it's nice to refresh yourself and to feel confident and feel like, oh, wow, I need to get reacquainted with this again. So, anyway, all right, we'll talk to you on the next one. Bye.